Derbyite, I'm here with Tony Ruiz and Charles Bright and Riley Chow and Zach Laws, and we're here to talk about the writing and directing categories for drama series. They're so exciting. We could talk about them for hours, but we won't bore you to death. We're firstly going to go through the directing for a drama series category, and I'll quickly read out the nominees. They are Vince Gilligan for Better Call Saul for the episode Witness, Stephen Daldry for The Crown for Hyde Park Corner, Reed Morano for The Handmaid's Tale, Offred, which is the pilot, Kate Dennis for The Handmaid's Tale for The Bridge, Leslie Linka Glatter for Homeland America First, the Duffer Brothers for Stranger Things for Chapter 1, The Vanishing of Will Byers, and Jonathan Nolan for Westworld for The Bicameral Mind. Wow, that is such an exciting category. There's so much to pick apart with that one. Who do I go to first? I think I'm going to go to Zach.
Yay.
How you how are you calling this one?
Well, this is an exciting category, and like every single category in the drama series races over at the Emmys, we don't have last year's winner to go off of. So 2 years in a row, we had Game of Thrones triumphing here. We got to look for something different. Right now, my instinct is telling me to go with the pilot of Handmaid's Tale. It's what I have predicted to win Best Drama Series. Sometimes those two can go hand in hand, as we've seen them do with Game of Thrones. On the other hand, it worries me that there are two nominees from The Handmaid's Tale. So are they going to split the vote? But then on the other hand, Game of Thrones always had two nominees and never split the vote. So yeah. I don't know what kind of logic to apply here. I think that if anything's going to beat it, there's a lot of options. Stranger Things, Westworld, The Crown. You know, those are all very strong directorial efforts. And there's also two Emmy favorites in here with Leslie Linka Glatter and Vince Gilligan. So I can be convinced to change my vote somewhere else.
I'm getting a headache from just from trying to work this one out. Riley, can you give us some stats or some kind of like logic, please?
Yeah, all I'm going to do is I'm just going to predict whatever I think is going to win Best Drama Series, which I'll predict based on what wins Best Casting. And the reason why casting is so important recently is because 3 years ago they opened up casting so that it's not just casting directors voting on it, it's also the producers branch and it's also the directors branch. So to win casting, you need to appeal to like a broad group, like a larger group than are voting on most other awards, and also a more diverse group. So that's why we get such a good idea, I think, of what wins the series categories based on what wins the casting categories. So I'm going with Stranger Things for now because that's who I have winning drama series. But I was surprised by the nominations that like Better Call Saul got in. Like Vince Gilligan couldn't get in for directing the Better Call Saul pilot. He couldn't get in for directing the second season finale. And now he gets nominated for an episode in the middle of the third season, which he actually left in the middle to go do a Sneaky Pete. It just seems random, but I guess that show is on an upswing with all branches except for the actors. They also got a music supervision nomination for some reason. And then also I was surprised by the second nomination for The Handmaid's Tale. Like this is on a network that had only gotten one scripted nomination previously. And now they have a show that gets nominated for a hanging episode by an unknown female director for a first season. And in the last 2 decades, the only time that we've had a first season show double nominated is Boardwalk Empire from Martin Scorsese. So there's a lot of like really heavy hitting dramas that could only get their pilot in and nothing else. So The Handmaid's Tale seems really strong.
Yeah, it certainly does. Tony, where are you sitting with this one?
I feel like I could throw a dart and whatever I hit has a possibility of winning. On one hand, I agree with everything Riley said. I agree with everything Zach said. We also know that they like to go with oftentimes they like to go with the most directed episode, which could tilt things in the favor of Westworld for that very complicated, very atmospheric finale episode. But then they also like big names, and Stephen Daldry is a really big name. Yeah. A Tony-winning director, an Oscar-nominated director who gets nominated for an Oscar anytime he makes a movie, practically. And that episode of The Crown covers a lot of different locations. I mean, I'm tilting towards Westworld for now, only because I think
Because
that
it's your
one
favorite,
kind of,
right, Tony?
yes, my absolute favorite. I'm leaning towards Westworld only because, you know, it's so overperformed, particularly in the craft categories. It clearly is a show that the Emmy voters seem to like, including the nominations that we didn't see coming, and it's the most directed episode. But I'm not confident in it at all. Like I said, I think any of these nominees has a rationale for being a winner.
Yeah, Charlie?
It's so tough. I want to pick one of The Handmaid's Tale, but I don't think that's. I don't know. I'm really caught up between The Crown with Stephen Daldry. They do like their British people, though that seems to tend to manifest itself more in the writing categories, and Stranger Things. So I'm down to one of those, but I have no clue. This is very, very, very difficult.
Yeah, it's really, really bad. Like for me, first of all, I'm very happy that we have 3 women nominated in this category. It's really exciting. That goes to show that female directors and technicians obviously have more opportunities in television than they do in cinema. Kate Dennis is Australian. Leslie Linka Glatter, she's like a veteran, and Reed Morano is one of the very important kind of creative forces behind that show, Handmaid's Tale. Also, Reed Morano, for me, directed the best episode of the whole season, which was Late, episode 3. Unfortunately, that wasn't submitted, and she's been submitted for the pilot instead. I think if anyone who is really a fan of this show, The Handmaid's Tale, they will know that Reed Morano is one of the really important creative forces behind the show, and perhaps maybe she might win just because of that, and also because it's the pilot. Then you've got Stephen Daldry, Vince Gilligan, very big names, and Jonathan Nolan. You know, the Nolan name now is actually, you know, in everyone's mind, given what's going on the movie side with Dunkirk. So I've got all these arguments in my head, and then I seem to just be going straight back to the Duffer Brothers, because if they're going to reward Stranger Things, I'm thinking that the Duffer Brothers might take home an Emmy for their particular work on the show, either in this category or in the other one, and in the writing category. So I am at a complete loss. I think maybe Tony's probably got the best argument, which is just get a dart out and throw it at the screen, because and don't break the screen, obviously, because I just don't know what to do here.
I learned that lesson last year.
Charlie's done that.
The Margot Martindale. Let's not go down that road again, okay? Because it costs a lot of money to change your screen. So maybe we need to put like some names on a wall, on a dartboard, perhaps. Maybe that's the safest bet, and just
have Matt Noble get his chalkboard out.
Yeah, let's do that. Let's do that.
I guess in a sense, if you wanted to make an argument that, you know, look at the last 2 winners in this category, they've been Game of Thrones. I mean, you know, the closest equivalent I guess we have to that is something like Westworld or Stranger Things, you know, genre shows that are very technically difficult to direct. I do still wonder, though, about Reed Morano for The Handmaid's Tale.
Yeah.
I mean, oftentimes we see, they'll see the word pilot and be like, oh, well, that was, you know, something that I want to vote for. And just to answer Riley's question about how Better Call Saul got a music supervision nomination, that guy did an interview with me earlier in the season, and so that's why he's here.
No, I thought
to your point though, to your point though, Zach, they were also the most cinematic. Those the 2 Game of Thrones winners, they were very cinematic, and if you look at it from that end, The Crown becomes a very, very formidable contender here, because, you know, Stephen Daldry is the one of these people who is most associated with film. He's been nominated for 3 Oscars. He's and it has that grand feel, like you're watching this extended period piece.
Oh no, I agree with you. Yeah, I mean, there's strong points I think you can make about, you know, 4 of these nominees at the very, you know, I think if it comes down to Handmaid's Tale, Crown, Westworld, Stranger Things, which of those wins? Maybe all of those split the vote and it goes to something that we're not expecting.
That's true. Like, so let's all remember that a few years ago, Steve Shield won for Dexter. That was very it was unexpected. It wasn't the hottest show of the year. The directors are voting in this category. They're voting for what they think was the best directed episode, and they don't necessarily care about scope or cinema or name recognition. I mean, obviously they do sometimes. People like Martin Scorsese will win.
That's also where, like, Tim Van Patten winning for Boardwalk Empire.
Right. So they really
do. When ER won, remember? That was completely out of the blue.
Yes. So they do vote, I think, with some integrity, and therefore, you know, our heads will be spinning if Leslie Linka Glatter can win for Homeland. I mean, I doubt that. Homeland is really on the downswing. But what about Kate Dennis? Her episode of The Handmaid's Tale, the second last one, The Bridge, has a lot of really interesting set pieces, and she could easily win that if someone like Steve Shield can win for Dexter, and that's no criticism because it was a very well directed episode that he won for. So this is why this is the kind of thing that keeps me up at night, which shows that I need to get a life. But apart from that, they keep me up at night. Yeah,
I will say, I mean, just, you know, for in Miss Linka Glatter's defense, I mean, you know, even though Homeland may be in a downslide, if she keeps getting nominated, because she is one of the most respected directors in television. She's been doing television. She is an Oscar nominee, by the way, actually, for a short film that she did. So Stephen Daldry's not the only Oscar nominee in this bunch. But I mean, she's someone who's never won an Emmy before, even though she's directed episodes of Mad Men and Twin Peaks and ER, NYPD Blue, just on and on and on and on.
And she has. Sorry to interrupt you, mate. Go ahead.
No. I was pretty much finished.
Her mentor, Mimi Leder, she should have been nominated for The Leftovers. So, like, really, that's what reminds me. When I see Leslie Linka Glatter, I think, well, where's Mimi Leder? She should have been here too. Anyway, go ahead.
And I think the cinematic aspect for the most cinematic episode, I think Westworld has to be considered in that, because you've got these multiple timelines, multiple set pieces, really complicated, you know, fight scenes and shootings, and you have to have the emotion on top of that. So, you know, I think we underestimate Westworld at our peril. I mean, they clearly responded to that show, and that episode ticks a lot of the boxes for an Emmy-winning directing submission.
I think we don't have enough data yet to say whether, under the new plurality system, if, like, in the directing categories, are they just taking off whatever is the series winner, or are they going with the most cinematic? Because last year, they went with the most cinematic episodes. They went with Inside Amy Schumer over Last Week Tonight. They went with The Night Manager over People vs. O.J. Simpson. They went with Transparent over Veep. And then Game of Thrones obviously takes both. But in the case of The Night Manager and Transparent, they might have just won because of vote splitting. So, yeah, so it's the same thing on the writer's side too. Like, are they going to go with Master of None because it's, you know, the most written, or is it just a case of vote splitting between the series that are further ahead?
Yeah,
we'll find out in a few years, I think, unless they change the system again, which they probably will.
I hope they don't. Well, yeah, but we need to get some years up our sleeves so that we can start looking at statistics. Look, let's go to writing, because that's another killer. You know, actually, I'm sure you all agree. Every year I look forward to the writing in a drama series category. It's the one category where you find some really beautiful nuggets of gold, where maybe some shows are not represented elsewhere. That's not necessarily the case this year, but we still have some really exciting nominations, and they are Joe Weisberg and Joel Fields for The Americans for the episode The Soviet Division, Gordon Smith for Better Call Saul, Chicanery, Peter Morgan for The Crown for Assassins, Bruce Miller for The Handmaid's Tale for Offred, the pilot, the Duffer Brothers for Stranger Things, Chapter 1, The Vanishing of Will Byers, and Lisa Joy and Jonathan Nolan for Westworld for The Bicameral Mind. So we have three episodes also nominated in directing: the pilot for The Handmaid's Tale Chapter 1, also the pilot of Stranger Things, and the finale of Westworld. We've got the second last episode of The Crown, the one that most fans seem to say is the best episode of that season. Chicanery from Better Call Saul, the one episode that everyone was raving about last season, and The Soviet Division, which is the season finale of The Americans. So this category just blows my mind. It's so fantastic. I think it's only missing for me The Leftovers, but even without The Leftovers, I'm still very happy with this lineup. Tony, Where do you see this landing? This one's another really hard one.
Yeah, no pressure. In terms of writing, I think I see this as a split between The Crown and The Handmaid's Tale, both of which have they have really good reasons why they should win. On The Crown, Peter Morgan is an award-winning writer. He's written everything, and and this episode of The Crown particularly is almost like a 3-act play in and of itself. It consists of all these beautifully written scenes between characters, so you get this really rich dialogue, these rich performances, and I could totally see this winning. On the other hand, The Handmaid's Tale has the literary cachet to take a book that many people thought was, when I first heard that they were going to turn The Handmaid's Tale into a series, I was like, how are they going to do that? And they opened it up beautifully. So I really think that those two, for me, are the strongest contenders. I have no idea. Right now I'm predicting The Crown, but I'm not confident in it at all.
Yeah. Riley?
All these shows are getting so smart at playing the Emmy game. I mean, for 12 years, from 2002 to 2014, we had shows get nominated taking up, 2, 3, 4 slots. Whereas now everybody wants to win because they recognize that vote splitting is a thing. So you have The Americans, The Crown, The Handmaid's Tale, Stranger Things, and Westworld. This is their only submission. So we have, a category where vote splitting is not going to be a factor. The only one that submitted more of the nominees is Better Call Saul, and then this episode obviously stood out from the pack. So for this one, just like directing, I'm waiting to see what wins casting. If it's The Handmaid's Tale, then I'll definitely go with The Handmaid's Tale. But if it's Stranger Things or Westworld or The Crown, then I'm a bit apprehensive, and I might go for The Americans because I mentioned, I think in the last video, that at the Writers Guild Awards, where normally they award dramas for Best New Series, both Stranger Things and Westworld lost to Atlanta. And they also lost the Best Drama Series category to The Americans. So if they couldn't win, I don't know if they have that much support from the writers. So I might just have to go for The Americans. I definitely would go for The Americans if it were up for series and if this season had been stronger.
Yeah. Charlie?
Again, this is a very, very difficult one. Part of me is just drawn to The Crown because, as I said, the Emmys do love their British writers. So that's just something that is that's gnawing on my mind. Handmaid's Tale is one to keep an eye out for. One that I think is being lost in this is the episode Chicanery from Better Call Saul, written by Gordon Smith. It's nice to see that he bounced back after losing his U.S. Senate seat in 2008, but he really... that episode with that scene in the what is it? It's not a courtroom. It's you know what I'm talking about. Yeah, the bar association.
It was incredible.
That scene is, and it's the dialogue. The dialogue is so tense with everything, and then Michael McKean's beautiful delivery of that monologue that he has there, where he loses it. Is so beautiful. I'm not predicting it to win, but part of me could see this as like one of those big upsets that we really don't see coming.
And Zach?
I think, listening to all you guys talk about this stuff, I'm like, okay, which one am I going to pick so I sound the smartest? Like Riley mentioned, Better Call Saul submitted a lot of episodes, which has been a bad tactic as of late, as we saw with This Is Us. But this episode, Chicanery, made it in, and I think for the reasons that Charlie was talking about, the fact that it is such a writerly episode. It's basically, it's like a stage play, in a sense, where they're just in this one room and it's all about the dialogue. And so I don't think it would be necessarily an upset if it won. I think in the sense that maybe we're predicting either Handmaid's Tale or The Crown, these newer shows to win in this category. But I mean, if those all start taking votes away from each other, Chicanery could be the one that people are like, you know what? I want to give Better Call Saul something, and I really liked this episode.
Oh man, this is too tough. You know, I've come up with all the arguments, and you've all made really interesting arguments, and I think I'm settling on Bruce Miller adapted a very famous novel, and he really just hit it out of the park, and I think he will be rewarded for that, and that's why I think I'm just going with The Handmaid's Tale. I think to me it just seems like the most obvious, but I tell you what, this is one of very few categories that if any of these 6 won, I would not be disappointed. I'd be standing up clapping for any of them because they're all very, very, very deserving. So I am completely at a loss. So you guys have just been completely useless. Thanks so much for not giving me anything to hold on to. This is too hard, right? It's just too hard. Let's give up.
It's a good problem. It's a good problem to have.
It totally is.
It's a good problem to have.
Yeah. So any final thoughts before we wrap up?
I will say, even though I made that argument for Better Call Saul, I am currently predicting The Handmaid's Tale to win, and number 2 is The Crown, number 3 is Better Call Saul. But I wouldn't be surprised if any of these guys win. I think that the thing that might hurt something like Stranger Things or Westworld is the fact that I think they might be looked at as more achievements in directing than in writing, and so they may get voted for in that category as opposed to this one.
We did say that about Battle of the Bastards, though.
That's true, but I mean, to your point, that's a good one. If Game of Thrones could win for writing, I think those are kind of like in sweep scenarios too. So if one of those 2 shows ends up winning drama series, then yes, the writing award could go along with it.
The thing that Battle of the Bastards had that I don't think any of these episodes had is that I don't think any one of these episodes was like an event episode that everybody was talking about, which I think puts a sweep mentality somewhat at bay. I'm predicting The Crown right now just because of the British aspect, and that it is a wordy, dialogue rich writing. It's a writer's dream with that. But I could easily, like Rob, I would cheer for any of these winners. It's a great category.
Right.